Well, I thought I would start by just saying a little bit about the history of praise and complaint. That's what the book is called, and how it came into being. Although it's a little embarrassing, as most of my stories are, they don't reflect well on me. Um, we went to India for the first time in 1970. We meaning Daphne. Daphne, get up and be photographed. And I was really impressed with all the talented people that were there. You know, you have people like, not that he was there, but Bob Brown and Jim Meyer and all these fantastic singers and musicians. And we had a woman there, I remember, who had just won some contest in Canada, and she got enough money from the contest winner to travel around the world, so she came to India. And all these people, and they're all performing for the Mandali, and I had no skills whatsoever. So this created a problem for me because I wanted to be the center of attention. And I didn't know how to do it. And I wanted them to, to pat me on the back and say, what a good boy, but I didn't know what to do. I couldn't sing, I couldn't play. And then it suddenly struck me that I could write something. So I thought, this is my way to get someone to pay attention to me. And I dashed off a short little 4-page poem. I remember I was reading, first time ever, I was reading it to Mani, Baba's sister. I was a little nervous. It's 4 pages. I think it took me around 20 seconds to read it to Mani. And you know how sweet Mani was, but she wasn't quite sure what to say. So after a little pause, she said, well, very good, but I think next time maybe read it a little slower. So at least she didn't say never read it to me again, so I was encouraged because it doesn't take much to encourage me. So I thought, of course I asked Erich if he would like to hear a poem, and he said, no, I don't know anything about poetry, send it to my brother Merwan in Pune. He's not dumb. So there's one person there who some of you know, who at that point, you only saw him when he came out of his room to go to the bathroom. And this was Bal, who was busy writing 16 hours a day, whatever, in his little room, and he'd just be writing, but he had dysentery. So every couple hours he'd come out of his bathroom, out of his room and go across the hall and go to the bath, and I caught him when he was on one of his trips. I said, Bal, would you like to hear this? So Bal said, sure. And so I read out, I don't know what it was, I read some poem to Bal. He said, that's good. That's very good. I tell you, it's sublime. So I was pretty excited. So I went home and wrote another poem, came back the next day, Bal, I've got another one. You want to hear it? He said, sure. So I read it to him, and he said, that's good. That's very good. I tell you, it's sublime. Now, being a bit of a slow learner, it took a third poem for me to read. And when he said, that's good, that's very good, I tell you it's sublime, I realized I could read the phone book to him and I'd get the same response. So anyway, out of this frantic need to be recognized, I started writing poems. And at one point, we made a tiny little booklet we bought from some store somewhere, cute little note paper with little ducks in the corner and frogs and different animals. And I typed a poem on each page, and we gave it to Mera. And Erich told Bill LePage that he should publish this. And Bill would do anything Erich said. That was his nature. So he'd been told he had to publish my poetry. He had no interest in doing that, but he said, okay, if Erich says it. But he was really upset because he thought these were the most sickening drawings he had ever seen. Way too cute, and he was sure that Daphne had done them. So when he found out that Daphne hadn't done the drawings and they weren't part of the thing, he said, okay, fine. And so he published it through Jimmy Mystery in Bombay, and that's how Praise and Complaint came out. And the title is somewhat via Erich, because I don't remember exactly, but it seemed like something that Erich would say, that, in your relationship with God, it doesn't have to all be pious devotion. What God wants is honest relationship. And that by extension, to be able to complain and be wholehearted, which Erich, any poem which I'm complaining is the ones that Erich really liked. I'm giving Bob a hard time because of the mess he's made of the world. Erich always liked those. But that this in its own way is praise, because it's you're being open and honest. So that's how the book came about. And I was just looking, it says there that it was published in 1978. And my memory, which is not necessarily the way it was, is that it sold out very quickly. I think it cost $1. We had it printed in India. And
How many?
I never knew. Jimmy would never tell me. He changed the story every time I asked. But I think it sold out immediately, because my impression is that Kitty made everyone who came into her office get a copy. UPS men, people looking for, oh, you must have it. It's only $1, only $1. Very good, very good. Only $1, people. So it's been sold out for, 30 years. And over time, people would say, can I get a copy? And I'd say, there aren't any copies. And some people around 5 or 6 years ago asked me, said, can we reprint it? I said, sure, as long as it doesn't cost me any money, I don't care. And so 5 years later, nothing had happened. Things had happened, but it hadn't come out. So this last trip to India, somebody said, can I get it? I said, okay, enough is enough. I will republish it, which I did. And so that's why we have it now. And the cover, the artwork, painting that my son Josh did. So a little nepotism, but there's an email in there if you want to send Josh an email. Say, oh, I really like the cover.
Yeah,
I
that's
do
nice.
like the cover.
So eventually, Erich could no longer get away with constantly saying, send your poems to Meherwan in Pune. I didn't know Meherwan that well at that point. I got to know. But anyway, so eventually I would read them. And as most of you know, Erich was amazing in many ways. And one of the things he would do when people would sing or read or anything was focus with incredible concentration, as if he was trying to memorize what he was hearing. And it seemed like, and then when it was finished, this is a strange language and a strange medium often, rock and roll songs and just things he wasn't used to. He would be able to say, that one line, and he would repeat the line. So I didn't quite understand that line, or that line really touched me. And Baba, just during the day, might say to Erich, remember this for tomorrow. Remind me tomorrow. We have to do this. And at one point he had a list, 18 things he had to remember for the next day. And he would remember them all, because he had that kind of memory. So anyway, because he didn't want to overtax his memory, he didn't memorize every poem, but he would decide, this is my favorite poem, and then he would make me read that one every time. Say, Erich, you want to hear a new poem? No, read me the one I like.
Oh.
And this also seemed to me a little bit of the Mandali's way to get you over your pride and your ego by, initially it's really exciting. Oh, Erich likes a poem? But after he makes you read it for the 50th and you can never read something else, you start to hate that poem. And you feel this big when he makes you read it again and again and again. But anyway, in Erich's honor, I'm going to read the poem he would always make me read. 61. These don't have any names. It is only those outside your gate who dare sing of love. Who is there inside this room who can? When you took our hearts as slaves, our eyes and ears and mouths became your humble servants as well. What is there left of us to talk of love? Outside they sing, and you call us to the balcony and ask, who is that? And our eyes strain through the gathering dust to make out his face. They do not gaze in wonder at your own. You say, listen to what he's singing. And so our attention is fixed on his song. Where is the time to describe your beauty? You smile and bid us tell him that his singing has pleased you. How can we disobey and sing your praises instead? His singing is your garland, and your pleasure is his reward, and we know nothing of either. And when you turn and ask, did you hear? Were you listening to the words he used? They were born of real love. We can only dumbly nod our heads, for if you say it, it must be so. But we ourselves are deaf mutes when it comes to love. All we know is that that singer was blessed beyond measure, but that it would be a disgrace for one of us to leave your home and go sing outside your window.
Can you read it again?
No. I could read it again, but
I feel after you described the way Erich could listen, it really shows.
yeah, well, you can buy the book though and take it home and
Yeah.
read it.
I have it.
61.
$61 now. Boy, it's gone up.
So I'll read another one that I never got to meet Francis, and
What year did he die?
Went back to Australia after the last
Yeah, it
darshan.
was in the 70s.
no, it was in the
It
80s.
was in the 80s.
Yeah, because in '80
Yeah.
we went to meet him
Oh, that's
in Australia,
right,
and he
that's
was
right.
came to India.
Yeah, and I mean that's a funny story. You're talking about, reading poems to Erich's, sending poems to Erich's, send, because that way he could just say, oh, they got lost in the mail or whatever, to Merwan and Pune. In 1980, Erich's brother Merwan had Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a weird disease, autoimmune disease. You have an infection and you put out antibodies and then they attack your own immune system and you get paralyzed. And right after his 50th birthday, Merwan was thinking, gee, I'm in such good shape, how this is nice of Baba that, I have things to do, and like a week later he starts coming down with Guillain-Barré, which is, he felt kind of strange in his feet, they were tingling, and then they got paralyzed, and then the paralysis moved up. It can kill you. And in Merwan's case, it got up as far as his neck. He was totally paralyzed, and he went to the hospital, and he was there for a while, and actually, due to a variety of things, I ended up going to Pune to help in his recovery, to help take care of Merwan. So because I was there, and then Erich came, was spending time in Pune with his brother, and I know this is 1980, and when the Australian group always came for Amartithi, and Bill Lepage had invited us, Daphne and me, to come to Avatar's abode as his guest for Baba's birthday. So we said sure, because actually it's a complicated story, but Daphne was traveling around the world anyway, and I would meet up with her, and it just seemed like a fun thing to do. And so that Amartithi, when the Australian group found out that Erich was going to be in Pune and wasn't going to be in Amartithi, they decided to postpone their trip and not come. And then when they thought about it, they realized, what were we thinking? Amartithi isn't about Erich, it's about beloved Baba. And they felt so bad that they had made such a blunder that instead they came for Baba's birthday. So when we arrived in Australia, their whole group in Australia had gone to India, and they arrived back in Australia the day we were leaving.
Oh my gosh.
So we never got to meet Francis. But Judith Garbett, Bill Lepage's longtime secretary, was there. I mean, we had a great time in Australia, and she showed us around Avatar's abode, and we got to meet the Rouses and all sorts of longtime Baba lovers. It was a wonderful trip. And we went into where Francis lived, and on his bulletin board was a little poem, and it was one of mine. And so I thought that was kind of nice. So I'm going to read that one, 81.
That must have made you feel great, huh?
Well, I wasn't sure if this was an example of what not to do or what to do. There's no comment next to it like, wow, this is good. It's just there, so I wasn't sure, but it's still exciting. What is this bond which keeps me here? How many times have I set out for your home, only to have this morning finding me making preparations one more time? I have packed my bags so often, they are parched and threadbare, but I have yet to take that first step on the road to your house. Why am I still here? My bags are neatly placed, side by side, at the front door. They wait only for me to sling them upon my back and be off. And yet I wander from room to room, as if searching for something that I've misplaced. What am I waiting for? I have bid my friends goodbye already. Indeed, I have announced my departure so often, it's not likely that anyone will come to see me off. There is no reason to linger. And yet I find myself in the empty kitchen, making one last cup of tea. Oh, my beloved, when will I stop my ceaseless preparation and simply close the door behind me?
That's beautiful.
Many years later,
I don't think it's that he thought it wasn't the way to be.
well, many years later, Robert Rouse has a book, I don't know if you carry it, I think it's called The Water Carrier.
Oh, it's a great book.
What's it?
Oh, the water carrier.
Yeah.
I don't think we did.
It's hard to get it.
Hint, hint. It's a book that Robert Rouse wrote about Francis, and they were, friends in the early years. And so it's his life of Francis. And somewhere near the back of the book, Francis gives his description of sort of the essence of poetry. And I don't remember it, and we don't have it here, unfortunately, to look it up, but something about being caught between that one stage and the other. And so when I read that, I thought, oh, well, that explains it. So anyway, I enjoyed
What
that.
number is that one?
81. 81.
So now
I
you
got
have
the water
61
carrier
and
at home right now.
81.
We go home and look at it.
It's near the back somewhere. It's just like a sentence. I meant to...
Are you talking about in the water carrier?
Yeah, 81's near the back of this book, too, but The Water Carrier. 82 is the last poem, so 81.
It's next to last.
Next to last. So anyway, just to sort of go on with the poetry briefly, I'm a slow learner, so after this, we had Oh Beloved. And, yeah, which is also not carried here, but they're available in massive quantities in India. Jimmy, after Kitty sold out the first book, when we did the second, like Jimmy doubled the production run. And at that point, Kitty could no longer sell books because of tax things, so they didn't move at all. And I think they basically sell one a year in India. So there are hundreds of them in the back room of Mayor Nazar in India. So anytime you go there, you can pick up a copy. And again, I think they're selling for $1 or $2 or something. And now as a little plug, because it turns out it's so easy to do, these are paintings by Josh Coronis. The email is inside. We're working on another one, which I'm hoping that Cherryar will carry in another couple months when Daphne gets finished proofreading it.
That's a new one?
This will be a new one.
What's
Nice cover. Is that a Josh cover?
The Josh cover, yeah, Josh
It's a
cover.
Josh cover, but it's your poems?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. So
What's it called?
I haven't quite decided. Right now it's called Fire and Smoke, but that could change by the time it comes out. So, before I just go on and on, are there any special things that anybody would like to hear about?
You're doing great.
In terms of stories or?
Yeah, anything at all. Bal Natu used to always say, Bal Natu was very shy and did not consider himself one of the Mandali, and would make that very clear, that I'm not one of the Mandali, and was really self-effacing in that way. In an unpretentious, some people can be self-effacing in a very pretentious way. He was self-effacing in a very unpretentious way. And he would do his duty, though. And one of his duties was on Thursday Thursday was Erich's day, on Tuesday to entertain pilgrims who came out, which he always was really nervous about. He was a nervous individual anyway, but he thought, what am I going to say to them? But he would do his duty and go in the hall. And being the type of person I am, I would be delighted when he would go in the hall, because I think now I can get some work done. Because when I'm working with him, I can never get any work done because he's telling me Baba stories. And that just shows you how nuts I was. Instead of listening to the stories, no, Bal, I have to type this, And I don't remember any of the stories he told me. But we'd be working on Glimpses. Glimpses was Bal's biography of Baba's life. It starts in 43 when he met Baba. And we got up, I think, as far as 1954. The first volume covered like 7 years. The next covered 3 years. By volume 6, we were down to, I think, 3 weeks. So we were joking that soon we're going to write one day a whole volume, which in fact you could do. Baba's life was so full, you could do a whole volume on one day. But anyway, so I thought, well, this is great. Now I can actually get some work done, because it makes it impossible when I'm with him to get any work done. But Bal's health was never good. Erich used to call him Lazarus because he had risen from the dead. He should have died. He had tuberculosis. He was so weak he couldn't even turn over in bed. Somebody had to move him. And then he ended up, coming, Bob accepting him on the new life. There's a long story about that, which I won't tell now. And then coming and staying at Merazad and talking to all of you for so many years. But as his health got even worse, his nervousness increased even more. And I got the sense, as dim-witted as I am, that he really would appreciate it if I just at least went to the hall with him. Not that he ever needed my help, but he just felt more comfortable if somebody was there. So I went in the hall, and I was amazed to discover two things. He was brilliant. When you work with someone, sometimes you don't see that side. And people would ask him, well, the first thing he did, which really threw me off, is he announced at the beginning when he sat down, feel free, ask me any question you want. Nothing is barred. It doesn't matter what it is. And I can answer anything you ask. I thought, coming from Bal Natu, Mr. Diffidence himself, how can he say that? And then there'd be a pause. And he'd say, and it's easy for me to do that because my answer is always going to be the same. I don't know. So ask whatever you want.
He liked to tell jokes too.
He liked to tell jokes.
Puns and jokes.
And how we are, we come with ridiculous questions and really complicated conundrums about things. And he would answer with a Zen-like simplicity that never put the person down, never suggested this is a crazy, ridiculous question, and yet answered it in a really sweet way. And I wish I could remember examples of these, because again, I felt like, you're such an idiot that you're, not spending this time with him and saying, get out of the room, I can work. I only remember one instance when an Indian group came, and they were all concerned. And that was another thing Bal Natu would do, is when Indian groups came, he would take them aside into his room, because most of the time in Mandali Hall was in English. And so then they could come and he could speak Marathi or Hindi to them, and he would entertain them. And so it didn't matter if it was lunchtime. Indian groups knew that Bal Natu was available. So he would go into his room and nap, and suddenly 20 people are in the room, or 30, and they would ask him for advice. And I remember at one point they were saying there was dissension, as there always is in Baba groups, about that someone was doing something and this group didn't think it was right and so on. But wasn't it their duty to speak out? Shouldn't they stick to their guns? And it was their duty. And instantly Bal Natu said, yes, stick to your guns, but don't fire them. I thought that was pretty good. What else? Are we near our end? Or?
I'm curious about Khorshid's book.
I really don't have a whole lot to do with that. What it is that Khorshid was one of the very earliest Mandali, going back to the 20s. She heard Baba sing, she heard Baba talk and laugh. She was there in the early 20s with Mera and her mother Sunamasi. She stayed with Baba for years and years and years, and then ended up spending quite a bit of time. In the new life, she was sent to Bombay, as Baba sent everybody to different places. And after the new life, Baba didn't call her back again to stay with him. And she was just crushed. But Baba told her, basically, I know what I'm doing. I have work for you here. And she could never, what is my work? She didn't know that she was not consciously doing any work. But Baba said, no, I want you here. Anyway, so she continued as a close one. And then, and I don't remember the date, at some point she did move to Ahmednagar. I think maybe in the 70s. And then in the 80s, moved into the trust compound and was living in the trust compound. Her whole family.
She used to go back and forth in the 70s from Nagar to Bombay. She kept the place, and then eventually she sold it. But her mother was still living.
Yes.
And then her mother died in the early 70s, who was a Mandali.
Yes. And then came. and was there with her whole family in one tiny room. And Rustam Falhati, and I know you do carry this one, has some nice stories about Khorshid. And Khorshid being, unable to walk really, and being in pain constantly, and spending all their time sitting in one chair, unable to see, cheering people up, and making them feel that, life was good. And there's some nice stories that Rustam tells, which I won't repeat, but I encourage you to buy those little booklets. And just for there are a lot, every story is nice, but just for the Khorshid stories alone. Anyway, because Khorshid couldn't come out much, people would go in, if you were lucky enough to know that there was this gem hidden away in this tiny little room, and you could sit with Khorshid, and she would love to talk about Baba. Meher Baba. She always would correct people if they said Baba, Meher Baba. There's so many Babas in India, Meher Baba. And she, so people at one point started taping her stories. This is answering someone's question. So people would tape her stories, and they made a transcript of her tapes, which she told in no particular order. I mean, this is not the story of my life. She would just tell a story one day, and another day tell another story. And they were transcribed, but as you know, if you've ever done that, even though you can understand a tape perfectly, a talk perfectly, when you transcribe them, you often see the person has left out words. Sometimes they've said not when it shouldn't be. It said the exact opposite, but in context you understand it. Plus it wasn't in order. So it's just a question, and Khorshid said to the people involved in doing the book, make it nice. My English isn't good, it's my second language. Put it into good English and make the stories nice. And tell them the way they should be to glorify our Lord. So that's what we're doing now. We have the transcripts. We're trying to put them in chronological order. We're trying to do some research to find out the dates of the stories, because Khorshid wouldn't always be. She's talking about something that happened 70 years ago. So who remembers whether it was 1923 or 1925? And it doesn't matter, but if we can find out, we're trying to see if we can sort of cross-index them so that it will be in chronological order. And so it makes some sense. But she was one of the people, just to talk about Khorshid, who, we have to backtrack a little bit. Her father was very spiritually inclined. His parents died, I think, when he was 15 or 16. And as the eldest son, it became his duty to take care of the family. So he had to start working. And he didn't like that. He had, in fact, a liquor shop, which really went against his inclinations. All he wanted to do was spend his time thinking about God and praying, and he has to do this awful work. And so, at one point, is it okay if I digress and tell the story?
Oh, yeah.
So at one point, he had a friend, and his friend said, you seem miserable all the time, what is it? And he said, I want to devote my life to God, but I have to spend all my time doing this awful work that I don't like. And then said, you want spirituality? He said, yes, and money, because I need to support my family. He said, you want both? Well, there is a solution. And he told him the solution to your problems. He said, you can get everything. He said, you draw a circle, and you sit in the circle for 40 days and 40 nights, and you don't eat, and you don't sleep. And it's very difficult. Obviously it's difficult, but apparently the not sleeping and not eating, that's nothing. The hard part is that horrifying visions assault you. Just the things whatever scares you the most attacks you, and you can't move out of the circle, because Maya does its best to disrupt you. He says it's really difficult, but if you succeed, God will grant you anything you wish. And being very strong-willed, 40 days, I can do that. And he did, for 39 days. And he did have horrifying visions of tigers and monsters and snakes, but he stayed there. And on the 39th day, he fell asleep. And in his sleep, he had a vision of the goddess Lakshmi. And Lakshmi comes and is giving him something. And it's a baby. And the goddess is giving a baby, so he reaches up to take the baby. And as he does, he notices that his whole arms are turning to silver or gold from the goddess, from the touch being and she gives him the baby. And he basically says, but I don't want a baby. I want wealth. He said, this baby will give you everything you want. He said, who's the baby? And she said, her name is Korith Banu. And he wakes up from the vision, and he is utterly devastated because he realizes he's fallen asleep. And it's the 39th day, 39 days, and it's wasted. So he's just walking down the street totally heartbroken, and someone comes up to him. Must have been an acquaintance. I mean, the way Korith tells it, it's not clear if this is a stranger or an over, and says, you know, I have a jewelry shop and I need a partner. I've got like 15 people in it, but I can't manage it. Would you be willing to be my partner? So he says, yeah, and instantly starts making money. And I'm not sure exactly the time frame, maybe a year later or so, they have a baby. And he's forgotten about the dream, really. But he's getting money now, and he's supporting his family, and he gives up the liquor shop. I think he has a younger sibling take over because he hated doing that. And now he starts to visit saints and holy people because he can do that now. He can take time off. And his wife has a baby. And so in India, you go to see the astrologer, find out the horoscope, and the astrologer tells you the name. And the astrologer looks at the horoscope and says, this is Korith Banu. Wow. And it suddenly came back to him. This is the baby that Lakshmi promised me. And Korith said, I was always treated so well by my father. He always loved me and did anything he could to make me happy. So he found out that he went to see Sai Baba. Sai Baba sent him to Upasani Maharaj. And as a young girl, Korith remembers her father coming back and telling them about seeing Upasani Maharaj. And saying, you know, there's a young boy there, Merwan, and he really loves Baba. And Upasani loves him. And we just start talking about Merwan. And Korith just couldn't wait to meet Merwan. So I'll make this, anyway, she does meet Merwan, and she goes, and it's a wonderful story of her of seeing Baba for the first time, instantly falling in love. And thinking, this is what my whole life has been leading to. Now, I mean, this is everything. I'm absolutely content now. And she was with Upasani when Upasani told people, a small group, I've given my keys to Merwan. Wow. Stay with him now and do whatever he says. And he says, I may say something different in the future. You may hear me saying other things, but stick with him no matter what I say. Huh. And they did. For the rest of her life, she stuck with him. So that, you still have to get the book, because there's many more stories, but anyway, she was a gem. Just this quiet presence in the trust office. What time is it? Are we? 2:45. Okay. Are there any other questions? Yes?
Two. Do you have a favorite poem? And is there a poem in your new book that kind of exemplifies or expresses where you are now internally?
Well, if there were, I wouldn't admit it anyway. And I don't know. I wouldn't say this is my favorite poem. It turns out no one likes my favorite poem. I don't know why that is. People don't have good taste. If there's time and people are willing, I'll actually read 2 more poems from the book.
It goes on till 4, doesn't it? Yeah.
What?
It's only as long as
Well, but it's not compulsory. You know, at 3 we take a break and we have cookies and light chit-chat amongst ourselves, and we don't tape. We tell the real stories then once the tape is turned off. Obviously, some of you have a much better sense than I have of an internal sense of when you're pleasing Baba. And I really have very little sense of that. So what I felt, if I could ever make Mara happy, I felt that, I was pretty sure then that I'd made Baba happy, because Baba put so much emphasis on pleasing his beloved. So I would try and read poems to Mara in the hope that I could say something that would please her. And when you all get this book and take it home, I think you'll see that there are a whole bunch of poems that clearly are written for Mara. And they would come in those days to the Samadhi every 2 weeks. And I would always try and have a poem to read for Mara when they came. And in those days you could do it. It wasn't this intense competition to say your piece because there weren't that many people. I mean, in fact, in those days often there'd be more Mandali than there were pilgrims, and we were so lucky. We feel so lucky that we had that. Not that it's necessary, but we feel so lucky we had those days. So I would say I would always have a poem to read when Mara came. Actually, I would always have 2 poems, because once I read a poem and it moved Mara so much, she said, read another one. And I didn't have another poem because I just brought my poem. So after that, I'd always have another poem. And of course, after that, they never asked for another poem. That's the way it is with Baba. You know, you learn too late. But this was one, the women were in the tomb, and I was sitting outside the tomb, and this is the one that seemed like it moved them. Oh, sisters, tell me of my Lord. Worldly gossip I can no longer abide. It swarms about my head like enraged bees, whose senseless drone offends my ear's dignity. Sisters, tell me of my Lord. All other conversation is like a feast grown cold and stale, served to a man already sated. Oh, sisters, please, tell me of my Lord instead. Recall the years you spent with him while I was yearning for his sight. Take pity and tell me of my Lord. Don't try to wipe away my tears or hasten to assure me that I'm as fortunate as you, for none of that's important now. Just tell me of my Lord. Don't try to chronicle his life, for even such a matchless history as that will not assuage my heart's impatience. Quickly, tell me of that instant his glance first penetrated your soul and returned to him, bearing your heart as willing captive, overwhelmed with joy at this most unexpected catastrophe. Oh, sisters, tell me of my Lord. Tell me of his smile, how it so dazzled time forgot its purpose and remained behind to sit enchanted at his feet. Sisters, tell me of my Lord. Did the wind ruffle his beautiful brown hair in its ethereal caress? Did a single strand ever break loose and curve across his precious forehead? Please, don't neglect the slightest detail, for the simplest gesture of my Lord floods my mind with meaning. Oh, sisters, tell me of my Lord. Tell me how his eyes caressed your soul. Describe his finger shape, and tell me how they danced to tunes that he alone could hear. Oh, sisters, tell me of my Lord. Make the air charged once more with solemn bliss as it recalls the way it danced around his form. Sisters, talk and tell my heart has eyes to behold the sight it longs for. Oh, sisters, tell me of my Lord. Strip away these veils of worldliness, and by your talking make the formless God manifest, until his presence sits before me now, and all reality consists in him. Oh, sisters, tell me of my Lord.
Reminds me of Mara's sitting to the stories.
You sure people didn't like that one?
No, that wasn't my favorite. I'm saying that's the one that they said, could you do another one?
It's beautiful.
I mean, you know, and again, you have to imagine what the atmosphere was like in the Samadhi in those days with all the women there and the love they brought and generated. And it did remind me a little bit of Baba, and to the extent which, you know, more, but...
That's great.
Brings it back.
I said I would do... I can... You know how, Devon, if I fees you open it up and don't answer any question? This is kind of the antithesis of this. I open up and I can't find any poem I'm looking for. You know, I know it was just here a minute ago and they disappear.
Steve, these are all poems from the 70s or 80s?
Yeah, because this was published in '78, so they all had
It's
it.
from, I thought you were reading from your...
No, I'm only doing praise and complaint.
Well, you can do a few from the new ones.
If you really twist my arm. I don't know why this one always reminds me of Pendu. I'm not quite sure why, but because of that, I kind of like it. Maybe because Pendu would tell us in the early years how strict Baba was in instilling obedience on them. And I remember telling one story where Pendu was drinking a glass of water, and Baba had said something, probably some request, and Pendu didn't do it instantly. And so the next minute he knew, Baba had given, as we say in India, a tight slap, and the glass went flying across the room, because you weren't supposed to finish your sip of water. Instant obedience. Which is why, I told Anne this the other day, why when Meredith Starr, they were so puzzled, because Meredith Starr was not into instant obedience, and in fact Meredith Starr was into giving the Mandali orders. And Pendu just, what is this madman? And why does Baba tolerate it? Because I never understood at all why Baba put up with it until 31, when all of Baba's, not all, but so many of Baba's close ones had been gathered by Meredith at East Shalakam, and he'd collected them and that's why Baba put up with them.
Wow.
And Pendu said to Baba, this madman, he's telling us to meditate, he's giving us orders, and I said, do it. Do it? Yeah, do it. So Pendu said, I was so happy because I never got any sleep. He would get like 2 hours of sleep at night because he'd do night watch, and he'd be up all day doing. And Pendu said, I never cared about philosophy, never cared about spirituality, never cared about anything except to be by Baba physically, as close to Baba as I could be every moment of the day. And it was a dream come true when he found out that Baba, his cousin, as a little kid, he had this fantasy. Wouldn't it be wonderful if Zoroaster came again and it was Baba? Because Baba was the most precious person in the world to him. And then he found out it had happened, and Baba was a master, and he just rushed there. And so that was his dream. But so he never got any sleep. And so when Meredith would tell him to meditate, he would find an empty storeroom, and he would close the door and he would sleep. And he thought, this is great. I get to sleep and I'm obeying Baba. And I'm pleasing this lunatic. And so he'd kind of say, oh, what a good meditation. But anyway, something about his stories of the early years, in my mind, had something to do with his poem. So it always reminds me of Pendu, which is one reason why I like it. I thought love was the intimate exchange of pleasantries over tea, and presented myself at your door with sweetmeats and some other delicacy. You saw me standing there, and immediately knocked me into the dust sprawling. I was astonished and confused, and came back to your door, but this time I was crawling, only to be told that I was too late for tea, but there were dishes I could do. And I was escorted to the kitchen and informed that there was more work for me when I was through. I thought, well, his love is certainly extraordinary, and then perhaps this is some kind of trial, and asked the other servants how long I could expect to have to suffer through his denial. Denial, they exclaimed. You fool! Don't you realize this means he's accepted you? You should rejoice and thank God that he's found even this much for you to do. But rejoicing was the last thing on my mind, for life with him seemed a constant test. No sooner had I passed one than immediately I was confronted with the next. Until exhausted, I came begging him. I can take no more, I cried, overcome with tears. What? Are you still here, he said, and walked on, but not before he kicked me down the stairs. And yet that kick so startled me, I let go of my suffering, my self-pity, my very self, and finally learned that suffering, when accepted as his gift, becomes the joyous interplay of love for which I had so long yearned. I thought his love was a polite caress given over a cup of tea. Instead, it was a wild dance that trampled me to dust, and in dust set my heart free. Okay, we'll do one from the new one.
When were these written?
Who knows? Some of them very recently and some a long time ago. And since nobody has seen them, I can't read anybody's favorite because nobody has any favorites, so I don't know.
How about yours?
I don't know which is my favorite. I like some of them. Yeah. Actually, a couple of these. I mean, I had written and read at the center. So when I'm asked, oh, here's a cute little one. I thought, if every moment, whatever you are doing, you are desperately calling out to God, you will be saved. If every moment, whatever you are doing, you are secretly glorifying His existence, you will be saved. If every moment, despite your attempts to praise Him or call out to Him, you are actually only being self-indulgent and hypocritical, you will be saved. But it will take a little longer.
Oh, that's great. It's going to take a while for most of us.
Is the Master's Prayer in?
No. Oh, it's in this one, but that's way too long to read.
Oh, is that the one where people are having their thoughts?
Yes, Monkey Mind Takes Darshan. It's one of the few that I've actually named. This is one I wrote just a few months ago during our trip to India. Someone said something about something that describes sort of your state, where you are now. I think this one does pretty well at that. I am amazed that even when I know what I should do, I do not do it. And knowing full well that I should not do a certain thing, I do it nonetheless. Others sometimes come to me in confusion, unsure of what you want, or debating some point in their minds, making it more and more complicated until it is impossible to entangle the knotted thread of their intellectual analysis and arrive at any conclusion that does not contradict itself. And yet, I envy them, for they are, in their own way, earnestly seeking your pleasure. But for me, there is complete clarity. It is all so simple. I understand perfectly what you want me to do, and what you do not want me to do. Yet, knowing this, I still do not do what you want, and continue to do precisely that which you do not want. This is what amazes me. Which may be a good note to end on, and now we can have the nice refreshments that everyone's made and forget about how depressing that is. Cookies?
No, you said love is, God love is tea.
It wasn't.
Are you talking about the other one?
Your poem. Your poem.
The previous one?
Yeah.
Uh,
Love was tea.
Was a polite
Conversation.
over tea?
Yes, so let us have.
Yes, polite conversation over tea, yes. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.